You didn't kill your lavender because you forgot about it. You probably killed it because you cared for it too much. Think about it, you watered on schedule, you fed it, you gave it a comfortable spot, maybe even a little shade during the hottest part of the day because that felt kind. And somewhere in the middle of all that care, it collapsed anyway. Leaves turned brown, the base went soft, and you were left standing there wondering what you did wrong. Here's what nobody tells you at the nursery. Almost everything that feels like good plant care is exactly what lavender doesn't want. By the end of this video, you're going to know 5 secrets that can take your container lavender from a plant you keep replacing every spring to one that quietly survives for years with almost no attention from you. And secret number 3 is where most container gardeners, without realizing it, turn a perfectly healthy lavender plant into a slow-motion root rot experiment. I'm not explaining that one yet. You need the first 2 secrets first, because they set up exactly why the third one matters so much. Lavender comes from the hillsides of the Mediterranean, places with intense sun, thin rocky soil, long dry stretches, and constant airflow. That environment shaped everything about how this plant survives. Its roots expect to dry out. Its foliage expects wind and heat. It did not evolve to sit in a cozy, moist pot getting watered every few days like a fern. A container can either recreate those hillside conditions, or it can create the exact opposite. That single choice, whether your pot mimics a Mediterranean hillside or a rainforest floor, is the story running underneath everything in this video. Secret number 1 is to stop treating lavender like a thirsty houseplant. Most gardeners water on a calendar, every few days, sometimes daily in summer, because that's how we're taught to care for container plants in general. Fertilizing gets added to the routine too, often more than the plant needs because more feeding feels like more care. Here's why that instinct backfires with lavender specifically. Unlike moisture-loving container plants such as ferns, hostas, or many tropical houseplants, lavender's roots aren't built to function well in consistently damp soil. Constant moisture around the roots reduces the oxygen available to them, and that's when problems like root rot quietly begin, often before any symptoms show up above the soil line. This doesn't mean neglecting the plant. The goal isn't to punish it with drought. The goal is controlled stress, the kind of dry then wet rhythm the plant actually expects rather than a state of permanent dampness. So how do you know if it actually needs water instead of watering because 3 days have passed? Push a finger 2 inches into the soil. If it's dry at that depth, water. If it's still cool or damp, wait. A pot that's genuinely light when you lift it is usually thirsty. One that still feels heavy has plenty of moisture left. But even if you master this instinct completely, there's a problem hiding underneath the plant, one you can accidentally create before lavender ever goes into the pot. Secret number 2 is building the right root environment, and this starts with what's actually in the container. Standard potting soil is designed to hold water because most container plants want exactly that. For lavender, that same water-holding quality becomes a liability. Roots surrounded by dense, moisture-retaining soil struggle to access oxygen, and that combination, wet plus airless, is where trouble starts. A quality cactus or succulent-style mix is a solid starting point, since it already drains faster than typical potting soil. From there, many gardeners improve drainage further by blending in materials like pumice, perlite, or horticultural grit. There's no single universal ratio that works for every situation. The right amount depends on your existing mix, your climate, your pot size, and how often you tend to water. A gardener in a humid coastal state generally needs a grittier mix than someone gardening in a dry, windy climate, simply because moisture lingers longer in humid air. What actually matters, regardless of the exact recipe, is that water passes through quickly and air reaches the roots afterward. Watch for signs of trouble like compacted soil that stays saturated for days or water that seems to pool and sit rather than draining and disappearing. That's often described as perched water, moisture trapped near the bottom of the pot even after the rest has dried. The container itself plays a role too. Terracotta is porous, which lets some moisture escape through the walls, not just the drainage hole, and that can help prevent overly wet conditions. Plastic holds moisture longer and can also trap heat against the roots in full summer sun, though it's lighter and more affordable, which matters for larger plants or gardeners who move containers seasonally. Glazed ceramic looks similar to terracotta but doesn't breathe the same way, since the glaze seals the surface. Fabric containers allow airflow through the sides, which many gardeners find genuinely helps prevent soggy roots. None of these materials is universally wrong. Each comes with a trade-off worth understanding for your specific setup. You've fixed the soil, you've thought through the pot, but there's still one habit that can undo all of that work in a single humid summer. Watering, and this is secret number 3, the one I promised you at the start. Here's where conventional container advice gets lavender completely wrong. Most general guidance says to keep soil evenly moist. For lavender, evenly moist is closer to a slow decline than healthy care. Lavender generally prefers a cycle of deep watering followed by a real drying out period, rather than frequent shallow sips that keep the topsoil damp but never truly saturate or fully dry the root zone. But be careful with absolutes here. This doesn't mean every lavender plant should go 2 or 3 weeks without water no matter what. Frequency depends on temperature, pot size, plant size, soil mix, wind, humidity, rainfall, and even what the container is made of. So instead of memorizing a schedule, learn to read the plant and the pot. The finger test at 2 inches deep is your primary tool. Lifting the pot to judge weight is a fast secondary check once you've gotten used to how heavy it feels wet versus dry. A moisture meter can help too, especially for larger pots where your finger doesn't reach deep enough to tell the full story, though treat it as a helpful tool, not an absolute authority. It's also worth knowing the difference between temporary heat stress and actual chronic drought. On a brutal August afternoon, lavender foliage can look slightly droopy or dull simply from intense heat, even when the soil underneath is perfectly adequate. Give it until evening or the next morning before assuming it needs water. Actual drought stress looks different: foliage that stays dull and limp even after temperatures cool, soil that's bone dry well below the surface, and growth that stalls rather than bounces back. Morning watering tends to work well in hot weather since it gives the plant moisture before the most intense heat of the day arrives, and reduces the amount of time foliage stays damp overnight, which matters in humid climates where prolonged dampness invites fungal problems. And if you're using a saucer underneath your pot, especially after a sudden summer thunderstorm, don't let water sit there. Standing water in a saucer can wick right back up into the soil, quietly recreating the exact soggy conditions you work to avoid. Be honest, have you ever killed a lavender plant while genuinely trying to save it, maybe by watering more the moment it looked stressed? Tell me what happened in the comments. Was it too much water, the wrong pot, poor drainage, or something else entirely? I want to know what actually went wrong for you. If you're still watching and Plant Space Collective isn't in your subscription list yet, this is probably the kind of gardening content you came here for. Practical, zone-aware plant advice goes out from this channel every week, especially the stuff that can save you from spending another season replacing plants that never had the right conditions to begin with. If that sounds useful, hit subscribe. It only takes a second, and the next one will be waiting in your feed. Secret number 4 is pruning without destroying the plant. And this is where a lot of otherwise healthy lavender quietly turns into a woody, hollow disappointment. Left alone, lavender naturally starts pushing new growth further and further from an aging, increasingly woody base. Over a few seasons without pruning, that pattern leaves you with a plant that's green only at the very tips with a hollow, bare center underneath. It still might flower, but the structure underneath is falling apart. Timing matters here. The most common approach is a moderate shearing shortly after the main flowering period ends, cutting back into green growth to encourage the plant to branch and stay compact, rather than continuing to stretch outward from a bare center. Removing spent flower stems as they fade also helps redirect the plant's energy and keeps it looking tidy through the season. Here's the part that trips people up. Lavender generally has very limited ability to regrow from old, leafless, woody stems. That doesn't mean it can absolutely never recover from any cut into older wood, but it does mean gardeners should avoid deep, aggressive cuts into bare woody sections, especially all at once. A hard prune into mostly woody growth is far more likely to leave you with dead stubs than a fuller plant. The better long-term strategy is starting moderate, regular pruning early in the plant's life, before it ever gets the chance to become overgrown and heavily woody. A little consistent shaping each year keeps the plant compact and productive for far longer than trying to rescue a neglected one after the fact. None of this matters, though, if you bought the wrong lavender for where you actually live. Secret number 5 is choosing the lavender that actually matches your climate, and this is the reveal that ties everything else together. Here's something that surprises a lot of beginners. Lavender isn't one single plant. It's a whole group of related species and hybrids, and they don't all behave the same way in a pot or survive the same winters. English lavender, which includes well-known varieties like Munstead and Hidcote, tends to be the most cold-hardy option, generally performing well through colder northern winters better than many other types. It's prized for a classic sweet fragrance. The trade-off is that English lavender can be more sensitive to prolonged humidity, which makes drainage and airflow even more critical for gardeners in humid southern or coastal states. Lavandin, including varieties like Grosso and Provence, is a vigorous hybrid known for larger flower spikes and strong, robust growth. It generally handles heat well and produces an especially bold fragrance, but it tends to be noticeably less cold-hardy than English lavender, making it a better fit for milder winter climates, or for gardeners in colder zones who plan to move containers somewhere protected before frost. Spanish and French lavender types are known for their distinctive rabbit-ear-shaped flower heads and tend to thrive in warmer climates. They're generally more frost-sensitive than English lavender or lavandin, which actually makes them a strong candidate for container growing in colder regions specifically, since a pot can simply be moved indoors or into a sheltered space before winter arrives, something you obviously can't do with an in-ground planting. The real takeaway here is that hardiness and performance vary by cultivar, not just by the general word lavender. Before buying, check the specific varieties recommendations for your USDA zone rather than assuming any lavender you find at the garden center will behave the same as another. Since we're heading into late summer right now, this is exactly the checkpoint where all 5 of these secrets start to matter at once. Patios and containers are holding on to serious afternoon heat. Evaporation happens fast, sometimes faster than you'd expect from checking the surface alone. Sudden thunderstorms can dump water into a pot in minutes, followed by humid, sticky nights that keep foliage damp far longer than a drier climate would. This is also the natural window for that post-bloom pruning we talked about, and a good moment to start easing off any extra fertilizer, since pushing soft new growth too close to fall gives it little time to toughen up before cooler weather arrives. What you do with your lavender right now genuinely shapes how it enters fall, and ultimately whether it survives into next spring. What USDA zone are you gardening in? I'd genuinely like to know which lavender varieties are working best for different parts of the country, because what thrives in a humid Georgia backyard is going to look completely different from what survives a Minnesota winter in a pot. So let's bring these 5 secrets together. Treat lavender according to its actual growth habits, not the instincts that work for typical houseplants. Give the roots real drainage and airflow through the right soil and the right container. Water deeply, but base the timing on actual conditions, not a fixed calendar. Prune with intention, shaping the plant early and consistently rather than attempting a rescue cut into old wood. And choose a variety that's genuinely suited to your specific climate, instead of assuming every lavender plant is interchangeable. Lavender doesn't want luxury. It wants conditions that actually make sense for lavender. The goal was never to become obsessed with keeping it alive through constant attention. The goal is building the right environment once so the plant stops needing you to hover over it at all. If you found this useful, you need to see the next video, because I break down the container gardening mistakes that quietly kill plants even when you're doing almost everything else right. If you've ever had a perfectly healthy plant suddenly collapse in a pot for no obvious reason, that video is going to explain exactly why.